Well, I had been a mayor in a town called Jonesboro, Tennessee. I was a mayor there for about 9 years. I was an alderman for about 4 years. And I really enjoyed the political environment. I really enjoyed helping people make things happen. I really enjoyed trying to do things to better our community. And I've always had that bug. My dad was a alderman. In fact, he was elected alderman in the town of Jonesboro the same night that Martin Luther King Jr. got killed in 1968. So it wasn't a whole lot of partying that night, but we could understand the impact of what was going on. And he was the first African American to be elected alderman in that town. I was the first African American mayor of that town as well. So we really had a good understanding of trying to assist people and trying to make things happen and trying to do the right thing. And when I moved to St. Louis, I really wasn't going to get involved with politics, and I moved to the Shaw neighborhood, had an opportunity to be the president of the Shaw Neighborhood Improvement Association. I was able to meet with the alderman on several different occasions and had a chance to kind of just watch and look and listen to what was going on. And I just kind of felt like in the 5th Ward, in the 8th Ward here, we were kind of just going through the motions. I mean, it was more like there's people whose voices are not being heard, and I just felt like there were a lot of people who wanted to be a part of the process, but they were not. And I thought that this would give me a great opportunity to try to voice my opinion and be a voice for those who are voiceless. So I decided about a year ago to start talking to people and start trying to get an idea of maybe, you know, I might have a shot at a decent candidacy. And people were very supportive. A lot of people thought that it was a great thing to do and a nice time to do it. So we decided that we would run for alderman, and we've had nothing but just rave reviews and support from people. It's been great to meet a lot of new people and to continue to talk to people who are supporters. And so we're getting some good buzz and some good vibrations out there on the street. Feel real good about our candidacy, and the election's March the 3rd, so we're hoping that we can get a lot of people out to vote. Yeah. Okay. We moved to St. Louis about 17 years ago. I was working for a company called the National Benevolent Association. It's one of the 11 general units of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. And I was associate vice president for them. We were developing housing. We developed housing for seniors. We developed housing for people that were disabled. And we developed all over the country. We had probably 26 to 27 different projects that I helped develop, from Orlando, Florida, to Texas, to North Carolina, Tennessee. We were Indiana. We were all around. So it gave me a good opportunity to talk about zoning issues, to talk about housing issues with local governments, to discuss how we could give them a better product for the people that live there than they presently had. So it was really good. And then my wife, when we moved out here, she was unemployed, and she actually worked a hot minute or two with the city of Ferguson as a development person in their community development. And then she decided that she wanted to change, and she got a job with Habitat for Humanity. And now she's the CEO for Habitat for Humanity. And we have a 28-year-old daughter who is married. She went to University City School System, and she graduated, got a job, played basketball, got a job, and now she's married to an assistant basketball coach, and they live down in Ruston, Louisiana. So she's coming up the end of the month to help me with my campaign. In fact, she'll be here, like, I think the Friday before the election. So she's going to make some calls and knock on some doors with me and help some logistic ideas. We've basically kind of looked at things from an overall view of, you know, how we can make the 8th Ward better, but also how we can make the city of St. Louis better. And we think there's 3 things that really drive what's going on in the city and in our ward, and that's children and family, community, and commercial. When we talk about, and I think the most important, you know, people, and we will discuss some ideas about crime and how we can, you know, bring down the crime in the 8th Ward as well as the city. We have a program that we think will work But children and family, I think, is very important that we keep our children involved, that we have opportunities for them that relate to after-school programs. We would be really big supporters of trying to extend the after-school hours of our schools that we have in our ward. We think closing the doors at 3:30 or 4 o'clock is just way too early. They need to be open at 6:30 or 7 o'clock to allow kids to do some tutoring, some mentoring. It also allows families to participate in some after-school programs that might benefit them: photography, computer skills, English as a second language, Spanish as a second language. So there's an opportunity for us to utilize our schools more than we are by keeping them open after school, allowing children and families to take advantage of schools being open a little longer. When we talk about community, it's really about going back to having the old style block parties and getting to meet and greet your neighbors, learning who your neighbors are, talking to them, as opposed to just coming out of your crib with your blinders on. You're coming out of your crib and you're saying hello to your neighbor across the street. You're learning who your neighbors are. You're meeting them. Have some block parties where you come together, break bread, talk. And the children learn from that as well. They see, you know, when Johnny or Jane are 5 and 6 years old and they meet you, when they become 15, 16, 17, they meet you, they know who you are. So that's that whole community thing that we need to emphasize stronger in the 8th Ward, block to block. It makes things a lot better for each other when we know who our neighbors are and we can learn about each other. And then when we talk about commercial development, you know, we've got a nice commercial strip going down Grand, which is great, and part of the western portion of Grand is in the 8th Ward, and we've got some nice buildings and some nice commercial spaces down Grand. But I think that there needs to be a heightened emphasis in trying to develop some of our commercial space that we have in the 8th Ward, not for housing, not to convert that to housing, but let's develop those into some small businesses. I think the young people and even older people that live in our ward, they want to drive home from work, they want to park their car, they want to walk to a nice little meeting place, they want to walk to a little restaurant, a little bar, a little grill, they want to walk to a little coffee shop. So they want to have some of these amenities that you find in other parts of the city. We need to have those here in the 8th Ward specifically. And then also to try to develop some businesses in the 8th Ward. What happens a lot of times, there are people that work from home, and I've got a guy, I've been out walking and talking to people, and the guy's riding his bicycle 14, 15 miles to go to an office space. If he had a little office space over in the neighborhood, he wouldn't have to ride his bike so far. So maybe we could have some incubators, some office space below where you live, some live workspace. So we need to have a mixture, a variety of business models here in the 8th Ward, and that would be something that I would work toward. And one of the big things that we've talked about from the very beginning, and it was great to see the Tower Grove Neighborhood CDC finally do a little bit of work on this area, is a master plan. I think we need a master plan for our neighborhoods. We need to determine what we want to see, where we want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and that comes from a collaborative effort from the citizens that live in the community. That's not the alderman telling people what he wants. It's not a group of people telling other people what to do, but it's a collaborative of getting everybody involved, hearing their opinions, letting them do the draft version as opposed to me putting together a draft and talking to you about it. You put together the draft and then we'll work on it together. So I'm glad, you know, we haven't had any planning going on in the 8th Ward in 18 years or more, you know. So it was great to see that the Tower Grove Neighborhood CDC decided to get involved with that. And I know it had a lot to do with them being able to try to get some funds to do some housing and that kind of thing. But I give them kudos for starting that process. But we need to enhance it. We need to make it, we need to look at this every 5 years, every 10 years. We get a working plan in our hands. We can then take it to developers. We can take it to contractors. We can say, this is what the people want. How can you help us make this happen? And it gets us out of this catch as catch can. You know, I think in St. Louis as a whole, you know, we're still with the mindset that, you know, if somebody wants to develop something, we got to just fall all over ourselves to make it happen. And we don't have to. We can be selective in what we want. We can pick and choose what we want based on what the community wants. So I think a planning document is one of the most definite things that we need to work on. So we've talked a lot about community. We've talked a lot about children and family services. We've talked a lot about commercial development. And, you know, one of the biggest things that we've talked to when we were out and been out talking to people and hearing what people have to say, one of the biggest things is people actually like to have a full-time alderman. They want somebody that's going to be there when they need them. And I'm going to be a full-time alderman. I'm not working part-time. I'm not going to, my business that I have set up now, I've got some associates that are going to run that business for me, so I'm not going to have to spend time with that. So it's going to be a full-time alderman. I'm hoping that maybe I can find some office space in the 8th Ward to actually set an office up so people can come and meet at the office. So a lot of people are talking about, you know, I don't want to wait till 5 o'clock to meet with you when you get off work, or, you know, I've got to meet with you at 8 o'clock in the morning, but you got to go to work. So I'm saying I'm availing myself as your public servant to be there for you when you need me, when it's convenient for you. So it's a full-time, you know, I'm going to do this full-time. So that's been a good thing, I think, that people really like and they've been attracted to. When you talk about some of the bigger issues, I don't think there's really a bigger issue than children and families. We've got great housing stock in Shaw. We've got great housing stock in the 8th Ward. There are some places that could use some repairs and maintenance and things like that. But overall, we've got great housing stock. And we've got to do everything we can for the families and the children that live here for them to be able to enjoy the housing stock that's here. We've got to put a little money into programs that will better their lives and better their opportunities. And one of those such things is some work during the summer. I think we need to step up the amount of money that we spend for work for our children, summer work and employment for our children. I think when children are given summer work to do, some for the first time, it actually gives them an idea that they can actually do something and be successful at it, puts a little money in their pocket, keeps them from doing things that we wouldn't want to see them do. So I think we need to spend a little more money into trying to create summer jobs for our children, working with businesses that want to come in and assist with hiring summer help, getting them involved in some of the gardens that we have around here. So I think that's a program that we all will benefit from when we fund that. And, you know, people are talking about police, and we're talking about crime, and we're talking about safety, and we're trying to figure out how we can make our city better. I mean, we have more crime going on now, death, killing, murders. I mean, it really is sad. And the only thing people are talking about, well, we need to get more cops on the street. And, you know, everybody would like to have more cops on the street, but, you know, what we really should try to work on is utilizing the police even better. Right now, you know, if somebody breaks into a house, you want somebody to be there in 5 or 10 minutes or 3 minutes to receive the call. It doesn't keep the house from being broken into. The house is already broken into. So the police are kind of very reactionary as opposed to proactive. And I think we ought to try to do things that will actually prevent crime as opposed to just trying to catch people. The system's kind of set up now where you got catch and release. You catch somebody for doing something, they spend a couple of years or 2 or 3 years, or, you know, even probation, and no big deal. But what we need to try to work on is preventing the crimes from happening. Very much like the fire department. You know, the fire department gets criticized for going out, putting up smoke detectors and, you know, looking over buildings and making sure that they're not fire traps. What they're trying to do is prevent fires. I would rather have them spending time out of the fire marshal's office trying to prevent fires than going out on calls to put fires out. So their values are a little different, and that's the same way that the police should be looked at. You know, to be able to make a call, riding around waiting on a call, okay, but I would rather for them to try to prevent the crimes from happening. So we put together a plan, or actually adopted a plan. It's called the Boston Miracle, And it's not anything new. It's been going on since 1995. There are several different communities that have adopted this plan. Kansas City right now is at an all-time low in crime with handguns because of this plan. It's something I think that the city needs to look at. And basically they take about, they know that there are 15 to 1,600 bad guys and gals out there. They've got records on them. They know who they are. Some of them are on probation. They know that they have to, be under court order. They know who these guys and gals are. So they call them in and they talk to them and they say, listen guys, we're going to, and they bring in a bunch of different services for them, but it's an all-inclusive from the police, the Attorney General, DEA, FBI. They bring in all the branches that deal with criminals, and they also bring in people that can help them with their GEDs, they can help them with job training, and they bring everybody together and they say, listen guys, the handguns must be put down. We know that you feel like you have to protect yourselves, but if you put these handguns down, you're admitting now that you're part of the human race, and we as police, we're going to protect you. The people actually put the handguns down, and they say, listen, if there's a handgun crime, we're not just going to give you 2 years at Hall Street or Potosi. We're going to send you 45 years to the big house, a federal penitentiary. All of a sudden, the kids and the people that are doing the bad things, they realize that the community cares about them because they're trying to provide some GED courses for them, they're trying to provide some job trainings, and the crime actually is reduced. It's happened in about 15 to 17 different cities. They have perennial call-ups where they bring the guys and the gals back in, they discuss things with them, they have people that deal with them on a continuous basis. Crime has been reduced, and I think it's something that we need to look at. We've got that program listed up on our website. The Post-Dispatch has a couple of articles that they've worked on toward that as well, so you can read up. You go to their website, www.mckinney4stl.com. You can see some of the work that's going on with the Boston Miracle. You can see that there have been several reports that people really like what it's all about. And when you walk around our neighborhood, people say, well, crime's down 30%, but that's still too high. That's still too high. Tell that to the guy that's running down Shenandoah and they're trying to shoot at him, or they shot at him with a handgun. Tell that to the couple that was at a restaurant here in our neighborhood that almost got their car jacked. Tell that to some people who've had their cars broken into. Even though crime's down 30%, that's still way too high, and we think we can reduce that with this particular program. So that's one of the things that we're really touting, and we talk about, it takes a village to raise a child. We think that it does take a village, and we think that by the neighbors getting out here, getting involved, it can actually help reduce crime as well. There's a neighborhood ownership model that we like that quite a bit. We like the fact that the neighbors are wanting to get involved, and that's what it takes, involvement. We think that social media is very important. We like the fact that we have a neighborhood listserv with Nextdoor Shaw that also has several other communities in the listserv that we would serve as the alderman. We think that's very important to be able to use social media, Facebook, Twitter, that kind of thing. But, it still gets back to the one-on-one, face-to-face. And, we're trying to build collaboratives. We're trying to build consensus. So, we would have opportunities for people to come to community-wide meetings, not just Shaw Neighborhood Improvement Associated meetings, but let's just have some neighborhood meetings where people could come out. We could have them at different times of the day and make it available for different people to be able to come to the meetings. But we want to avail ourselves for any opportunities to talk to groups of people, to get input from groups of people as well as individuals. So it really gets back to rolling up your sleeve, talking to people. As we campaign, you got to talk to people once you get elected as well. You got to continue those conversations, and you want people who normally don't participate in the process, you want to hear from them. So you got to make it available, you got to make it easy, you got to go to places that they frequent, and you got to talk to them, and you got to hear what they have to say. So I think it's a matter of rolling up your sleeves and getting out there going to work, and you can hear the voice of the voiceless if you try. You look around our neighborhood, and what kind of drew us to the neighborhood is the fact that in Shaw, for example, it's a historic district. In the 8th Ward itself, there's a lot of brick homes, there are a lot of old homes, there are a lot of, the architectural fabric of our community is outstanding. When I was the mayor of Jonesboro, Tennessee, the whole downtown area was on a historic National Register historic places. So I know a lot about, you know, trying to maintain that historic fabric of a community, because I was born and raised in a community that basically the whole town is on the historic registry for historic places. So we have to do everything we can to maintain the structures that we have. We don't want to get involved in you know, this demolition by neglect. We don't want to get involved in demoing buildings using eminent domain. We want to try to maintain the buildings that we have. And I know in the past, you know, there have been conversations where people feel that, you know, you're being, you know, too sensitive to the fact, but the historic fabric is what brought a lot of people to this community. The idea of the diversity in people, the diversity in buildings, the diversity that we have in our neighborhoods, that's what brought people to this neighborhood, and we want to maintain that. No, I think that the people that live here are very hardworking, some blue collar, some white collar, young and old. It's a very mixed neighborhood, but what the bottom thread, or the thread, I think, of the people that live in the 8th Ward and live in our community are the fact that they moved here, or they want to live here because of the diversity. They want to live here. It's not a situation where they feel threatened. They actually like diversity. They want to be a part of a diverse community. We have to determine how we consider diversity. Some people look at diversity strictly as black and white, Latino. You live in a mixed neighborhood where you have a bunch of different people. But I look at it, you know, there's sexual preferences. People have different sexual preferences live in this community. There are people who have different religious preferences, Catholic, Muslim, Christian. They live in this community because of the idea that they don't feel ostracized, that people appreciate the diversity. There's also income diversity. There are rich people, there are some poor people, there are middle income people that live in this community, and people like that. They want to live in an area where that diversity in income even exists. So obviously we start talking about school teachers, we talk about professional people, we talk about people that work for the city, we talk about people that are mail carriers. You know, we've got a very diverse, we have at-home, stay-at-home moms. We have people that are doing business for themselves in their homes. So we've got a very diverse group of people that live in the 8th Ward, and they do that, they want that. They live here especially for that. The problem that we're running into, unfortunately, is that because of some of the way things have gone on in the past, we're losing some diversity. We actually, our neighborhoods are becoming more gentrified every year. And I think it's a shame, because we need to have the ability to have people that don't look like us next door to us, or people that don't have $500,000 homes. There should be some homes available for them, or apartments that rent for $1,000. There should be some apartments that rent for $500 or $600. So one of the things when they talked about closing the Sherman School, you know, I think Sherman School always had great grades, and the kids worked hard and they were meeting the academic goals. But I think the reason they closed Sherman School was because the numbers went down. And when you talk about, you know, a school that's designed for 325, 350 kids, and it gets down to like 125, so it wasn't economical for the ward, for the school system to keep the school open. but it's because there wasn't any, the families and kids moved out of the ward. They couldn't afford to stay here anymore. They couldn't pay the rents that were being asked. So that had a lot to do with it. A lot of it is when you start incentivizing developers on the $400,000 and $500,000 homes, you need to incentivize them to build some workforce housing as well. Over here on DeTonte's, a vacant lot that's been over there for more than 15 years, that would be an ideal location for some workforce housing to bring some moms and pops, single family moms, single family dads, couples, 4 or 5 kids. Be great location to have some workforce housing. And now they're talking about, well, you know, if we can build some houses for $250,000, you know, $280,000, that's great, but you know, who's going to be able to afford to come into those houses? So we've got to do some things in our neighborhood that puts workforce housing at the forefront. You know, long ago, you know, people came in and they made an investment in the neighborhood. They bought a house, and then there's a time when the housing prices went up and people were still able to afford to buy houses. But right now, we're going through a time frame where we're losing people. We're losing good, hardworking people that were the backbone of our neighborhoods. They're being forced to move out because they can't afford to live here anymore, and that's a shame. Yeah, we've been going out talking and meeting and greeting people, and we've had a great group of canvassers and volunteers, and I want to thank them for their efforts. I want to thank the people that we met for giving us an opportunity to talk with them. We've had a lot of meet and greets. We've been to people's houses. We've had some meet and greets. We've had some fundraisers, and things have been going well, and I want to thank the volunteers. I want to thank our supporters. I appreciate your support. March the 3rd is the election day. That's a Tuesday. We've got about 12 days now to get out to vote, and some of our supporters have already voted absentee because they're going to be out of town on the 3rd, so that's great. But we want you to get out and vote now come March the 3rd. We need your support. If you want to take a look at some more ideas that I have, you can check those out on my website at www.mckinney4stl.com. We need your support. We need your vote. We're looking for you on March the 3rd. If you need to get in touch with me, you can check out the website, but you can also call me on my cell phones, 314-308-9894. That's McKinney for a better STL. I'm Kevin McKinney, and I appreciate your support.